Hello there, welcome back. The Ukrainian parliament has approved changes to the country's constitution which allow the greater decentralization of power. But the president says the new project doesn't include any special status for the Restiv, Donetsk and Lugansk regions.
В проєкті просто немає жодного натяку на федералізацію. Україна була, є і буде унітарною державою. Ніякого, як сьогодні написали деякі ЗМІ, особливого статусу Донбасу.
He added that these amendments don't go against February's Minsk agreement. Still, the special status is specifically mentioned in its text, and the self-proclaimed East Republics have already condemned the bill for violating the peace deal. Political analyst Alexander Pavic says passing such amendments won't help Kiev reconcile with the rest of regions.
This is an open defiance of the deal, of both the spirit and the letter. And Poroshenko clearly said in his speech that Ukraine is a unitary state. That means really autonomy, not even in name, is being offered. So obviously this is just a recipe for more war and hostility instead of reconciliation.
Overseeing the vote in Ukraine's Rada was one VIP guest, Assistant US Secretary of State Victoria Nuland. She joined the session together with colleagues from the State Department. However, Alexander Pavic feels the presence of such a VIP could be troubling for those who took part in the Maidan uprising around 18 months ago.
Victoria Nuland is one of the Obama administration's chief enforcers. Now she's gone to Kiev to tell them what to do. Now, to do it openly, well, it's just a humiliation for the people of Ukraine, for one thing, because they have to wonder, is this what it was all about? Is this what the Maidan was all about? So that they can have a foreign tutor in their parliament overseeing, so that they make sure that they vote the right way? Also, the EU, which supported Maidan. I mean, is this democracy to have some foreign official overseeing parliamentary votes?
Well, talking of parliamentary votes, the Rada session was indeed a sight to see as some of the parliament members decided to settle a dispute in a rather unparliamentary manner.
Вас хіба батьки не вчили, що битись негарно? Будь ласка, покиньте зал.
Also heating the debate at the session was another statement from the president, who said that all illegal armed groups need to be removed from the country in order to reform. Well, Murad Gazdiev has more on this.
What tells us how fragile and how critical the situation in Ukraine is that President Poroshenko this time chose to speak in front of the whole parliament, once again declaring that only the government in Ukraine should be allowed to hold a monopoly over the use of lethal force. He again called on the Interior Ministry to disarm armed bandits, as he called them, presumably also referring to ultra-nationalist right sector. This standoff traces its roots back a few days ago to events in Mukachevo, where an apparent turf war erupted. On the one hand, right sector fighters, and on the other, a local official, his armed followers and the local police. They got involved in a pitched battle, really, with the use of heavy weapons. A number of people killed, many more wounded, over, apparently, control of a cigarette smuggling route. This all happened 1,600 kilometers away from the front lines in the civil war. Right sector, in turn, mobilized its battalions, up to 10,000 fighters. The government mobilized and deployed armored units around the whole country. It's obviously very tense, and so it begs the question of how President Poroshenko is planning on disarming right sector. And right sector is as hardcore as they come. A few days ago, their press secretary said that if there's another coup in Ukraine, this time the president won't be able to escape, and that this time he'd most probably end up killed in some basement somewhere. Obviously, this is all leaving a sour taste in Europe's mouth. It wants stability in Ukraine, but there's little to be found so far, and it looks like it's getting worse.
It was on this day exactly 1 year ago that 4 boys playing football on a sunny Gaza beach were killed by Israeli missiles. The incident became one of the most disturbing moments of last year's war. 12 months later, RT's Lizzie Phelan visits the sites where they died. You may find some of the images coming up distressing.
Here on Gaza Beach, a football game between 8 boys, all relatives, ended in tragedy last year when Israel killed 4 of them with 3 rockets, the first of which landed on that container where one of the boys had gone to fetch the ball. The second chased them here along this beach, and the third landed near that garbage container. From these beachfront hotels, international journalists witnessed the atrocity, and they rushed to the scene where they broadcast pictures of those murdered boys, which shook the world. The surviving boys live with the image of their brothers and cousins blown to bits in front of their very own eyes every second of every day and night.
أنا بصلي وأنا بركب معي كل حياتي عياط زي ما أنت شايف قلبي محروق من جوا حريق يعني أطفال ذنبهم هدول ومنتصر مخلينا عيط بزيادة.
The international response to this atrocity has been feeble. Recently, the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon caved to US and Israeli pressure and removed Israel from a list of serious violators of children's rights. Many feel this flies in the face of the deaths of over 500 children during Israel's 7-week offensive last year. But it's not just children who aren't safe. During times of war, medical workers are in desperately short supply, perhaps nowhere more so than the Gaza Strip. I spoke to 2 paramedics who, during last year's offensive, rushed to rescue people from the rubble. They never made it. Their ambulances were hit by Israeli missiles.
بالنسبة لنا كضباط إسعاف يعني بالنسبة لاستهداف السيارات الإسعاف من قبل الجيش الإسرائيلي يعني ما خلاش يعني بالنسبة لنا كان كل يوم يعني ما خلاش الحرب هذه ما خلاش ما استثناش حل ما نصل نقدر نقدم الطارئة للمواطنين وخلينا نبطل يعني نخلي الناس تنزف وتموت في قلب دورها وما حد
إسرائيل ما قتلتش 4 أطفال وصابت 4. إسرائيل قتلت 5 أسر دمرتهم، سرقت كل حاجة حلوة في حياتهم، سرقت الفرحة، سرقت البهجة. إحنا ناس بسيطيين كنا بس بدنا أولادنا نشوفهم قدامنا زي باقي.
Lizzie Phelan in the Gaza Strip for RT.
Israel's Operation Protective Edge last summer resulted in more than 1,400 civilian deaths, including nearly 500 children. Israel suffered the loss of 7 civilians during the war, but at the height of the pain and grief, some people decided to inject some fun into the life of the wounded, like these 2 doctors with red noses and big smiles who visited the youngest victims of Israeli rockets. They still perform their unique form of treatment, dressing up as clowns and visiting seriously ill children in Gaza.
I'm a doctor and I dress up as a clown to entertain children at hospitals in Gaza. We want to remove barriers between doctors and patients and create a happy atmosphere. Nobody trained us how to do this, so it was difficult at first. We have seen some tragic cases of children dying in the wards. It's hard to cope with that, but we want to keep helping the youngsters and their parents. We can make the children smile and keep their spirits up.
Spacemen who took part in the historic Soyuz Apollo project have been marking 40 years since a Soviet and a US spaceship docked together in orbit, ending the space race.
Here. Glad to see you. Here.
But decades later, the US Deputy Defense Secretary says space must be considered, quote, a contested operational domain. Well, he announced a new space center to protect American satellites from hypothetical threats from Russia and China. It's claimed it will help the military and government coordinate responses to any attack and is part of the Pentagon $5 billion investment in space security. But space has traditionally been regarded as not a field for confrontation.
I think that, to be honest, if the United States were not trying to have so many confrontations with Russia and China, just maybe we wouldn't have these things to worry about so much. There should be frankly, a lot of room for cooperation, too. And, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense if each country tries through its government to try to run off and do something separate or do what we call reinventing the wheel. I think it's a lot better if you get some kind of cooperation.
Matt Kaiser's up next with fresh alarming predictions for the stock markets.